historically Christian writings. Its scriptures are written in codex or book form. Its members are called Christians. These are the two profiles. The first of Jesus' ministry circa the year 30. The second of the church in Ignatius's day circa 100. We often fail to see the significance of things with which we have long been familiar. This phenomenon of familiarity may affect our judgment of the two profiles. We affirm that both are fair representations, and we regard both as equally Christian. Otherwise, we may find neither surprising. Therein lies the beclouding potential of familiarity, of seeing but not seeing. Isaiah chapter 6, verse 9. For not one item in the second profile is the same as in the first. Within 75 years of the death of Jesus, the movement he founded conformed to virtually none of the forms of his ministry. A rural movement became acculturated to an urban environment. A Jewish movement became primarily gentile. A movement that spoke exclusively Aramaic and Hebrew transformed into one that wrote, preached, and evangelized in Greek. A movement born and bred in Palestine evolved into a thoroughly cosmopolitan Greco-Roman movement that spread along the highly influential Jerusalem-Rome corridor. The seed of a movement planted in synagogues flowered in churches that met no longer on Sabbath, but on Sunday, that celebrated Eucharist rather than Passover, whose canon was no longer limited to the Torah, prophets, and writings of the Old Testament, but it was expanded to include Christian writings that were produced and disseminated no longer on scrolls, but in codices. One of these changes, the transition from Aramaic and Hebrew to Greek, was already complete at the time the New Testament was being written. All extant Christian writings of the first century are written in Greek rather than in Aramaic or Hebrew. Jesus and his followers spoke Aramaic and worshipped in Hebrew, yet not one first-century Christian document is extant in either language. The lingua franca of the early church, at least in written form, changed to Greek early and in the West entirely. Most of the changes listed in the profiles, however, were still in progress when the New Testament was being written. Descriptions of the Jesus movement as the Way, saints, or brothers and sisters, for instance, were in the process of yielding to the name Christian, first given in Antioch, Acts chapter 11, verse 26. Similarly, the transition in leadership from the apostles, also known as the 12, to the offices of elder, deacon, and especially bishop, was already underway in the New Testament. Other changes had only just begun in the New Testament era. It is unclear, for example, whether Jesus' followers were worshiping on Sabbath or on Sunday, or perhaps on both. The single greatest change occurring in the early church was its separation from the Jewish synagogue, which took place sooner in some places, later in others, but eventually in all. And finally, some changes had not yet begun. The formation of the New Testament canon, for one, lay in the future and is mentioned in neither the New Testament nor the Apostolic Fathers. We devote individual chapters to each of the previous changes, seeking to follow each transition from the Jesus era to the Ignatius era. Some of the transitions leave a rich trail of evidence, others a faint trail, and some almost no trail. A single and momentous reality emerges from them, however, and towers like Mount Rainier above Puget Sound. Within a 75-year period, the span of a single lifetime, the Jesus movement had become the Christian church. How exactly did the movement that was begun by Jesus become the church described by Ignatius? The answer to that question is the focus of this book. Parsing the profiles. Why is the quantum change from Jesus' ministry to the early church of Ignatius' time seldom recognized and explored? One reason is historical bias. Histories of early Christianity generally regard the time of the apostolic